Hey, what's up, I'm Andy. Nothing just released their new range of earbuds, the Ear and Ear A, a week ago. Very soon after their new and very successful release of Nothing Phone 2A, which I've just reviewed a month ago actually. These new earbuds are probably the best you can get at this price. They're extremely competitive for the price, but there are some differences between them, pretty major I'd say. So I'll leave that down to you to decide if you need these extra features for the extra cost or just get the cheaper version, but overall both of these are very good and I'm gonna talk about them. So I went down to Nothing store in Soho on Saturday morning to test these out, and first off I have to say what a great experience. 10 out of 10 from every single perspective. Everyone was super friendly and welcomed you to test the headphones. There was some free coffee, some freebies like stickers with their buds, and a nice workshop downstairs. Lovely atmosphere, but also everyone who bought a product could have a go on one of these claw machines and you could win something from their products or clothes. So after I took some time listening to these in store, I've decided to buy them both. They immediately made me curious to test them more and see how my favorite albums sound on these, but also curious to test all their new features in my own time, see how they work with Apple Music and Spotify. I've now been using these for about a week, and right off the bat, the design on these I think is what gets you instantly. It's definitely subjective as every other product, but we can't ignore the fact that these stand out with the original trendy look and transparent case designed by Teenage Engineering. And not just that, they're very comfortable too, come with great software and presets, long battery life and great looks. So let's start with some of the features and then we'll compare them both. The Nothing Ear comes at $149 and you get two color options. I went with the white as I like the mix with the black stems rather than all black, but to be honest they both look really good. The Ear A comes at only $99 with three colors options this time, white, black and a new yellow. The unboxing experience feels very premium. You get a USB-C cable for charging, although these have wireless charging too for ear model. Some ear tips replacements with small and large sizes. The pre-installed ones are medium, which for me was a bit too much, so first thing I did was replacing these with the smaller ones. Setting these up is actually very easy. No matter what phone you're using, you need to download their Nothing X app for setup. And once you're in the app, open the buds case and they'll show up instantly. After that, just follow the simple instructions in app and make sure to update the firmware before setting these up, as they'll give you all the bug fixes for the better connectivity. This takes about 3 minutes and then you can see all your settings: EQ, shortcuts controls, the noise control where you get all the transparency and noise cancelling features, but most importantly, bass enhance feature. Now this was not specified anywhere, but this feature is turned on by default and it brings way too much bass on these. I was struggling to find a good EQ settings for my taste and then I realized this feature was on. So first thing, turn that off, see how they sound to you, and you can always turn it back on later. But my advice to get the best sound out of this is first to adjust this to your ears, leaving that setting off. There's a new feature now called Personal Sound Profile, where it basically asks for your age and according to that it calculates how much hearing loss you may have. Now let's talk about this because it gets more interesting. Basically, theory says with aging our top and higher frequencies are harder to hear. Although this is very different from person to person, but in most cases it's true. What you could hear when you were 10, you can't hear 20 years later and so on. But we're talking about very high frequencies here in general, like some people may hear sound at 15K and some won't. Will that affect your music listening experience? I don't really think so, but having a personalized EQ might be better. So I did a sound test on these and the profile I got was too much treble, which is fine, but there's another cool option there where you can reduce the blending mode of this profile. Basically, if you want to hear only 10% or 50% of it, you can choose to do that. So I've set mine to 40% only and it gives a little bit more of that top end, which is nice. I still feel like having this off and listening to the default sound of these buds is better in some cases, as these have a decent sound signature, but on some songs it comes in handy. I'd only recommend you to do the sound profile and see what you get out of these first. In my opinion, a good pair of buds don't need this. They come with their own sound and that's why I turned this off. The extra top end it gave me felt like it was a bit too much, and comparing these with my AirPods, those sounded bright enough with no adjustments, which I'm very used with. So this leaves us with one thing then. The age hearing test is not really necessary, but why you should use it on these is because some of you may like a bit more brighter sound, which Nothing Ear don't really have. In fact, none of these, including the Ear A, have a bright sound. Their sound signature is a bit more towards a flat EQ with flat treble and mids, but then you get a nice punch on the bottom end, very good deep bass and mid bass. So I see now why they've added this feature. It's basically a high pass filter which you can adjust and blend in as much as you like with your listening experience. Just to point out, this feature is not available on Ear A, unfortunately. It only comes with the more expensive model, which brings us to comparison and sound performance. So actually listening to these and comparing them side by side, you instantly feel there's quite a bit of a difference in sound there. Not dramatic, but having a ceramic driver on Ear definitely gives us more clarity overall, and a little wider soundstage too, which we don't really have on Ear A. The string instruments and hi-hats are more pronounced and you get a closer feel to the artist on these, whereas on Ear A the whole song is a little bit more reserved and compact. But having said that, again, this comes down to preference. The Ear A has a bit more like high mids where some parts of the vocals sit, and for me that's a much more interesting sound having that ear gain. These are gonna get compared a lot with AirPods Pro, especially for the price tag, considering the AirPods are twice as much or even more compared with Ear A. Both the Ear and Ear A sounds a bit thick overall, whereas the sound on AirPods is more balanced, just to give you a bit of a reference. These don't have anything standing out like bass or mids. In fact, AirPods are probably still the best when it comes to overall sound, and the finesse you get out of these is really good. So for the Nothing Ear, we have an advanced EQ as well, where you can get from 20Hz to 20 kHz and adjust any band you like. You can shift the EQ points, but also the Q factor. The Q factor is how flat or sharp your band gain is. This is a very advanced EQ which I've never seen on any earbuds. On the Ear A, the only option you get for your EQ is the simple mode, where you have 4 presets: more bass, more treble, voice and balanced, which is your default. Now none of these sound good, they're too harsh and they boost the frequencies to the top when you select them. The custom mode will give you some adjustments, again not as detailed as you get on Ear, but you can have a little bit of fiddling around. I've noticed this lowers the gain as soon as you touch it. It does this on both models, and I think this is a software issue at the moment. For example, if I boost the treble, it scoops the EQ. What that means is I hear a bit more treble, but then the mids are going down in the same time, although I haven't touched the mids. Then if I push those up, I'm back where I was in the first place. No idea why, but I hope this will be fixed. For now, your best option on Ear A might be just a balanced default sound. Shame we don't get the same advanced EQ settings on both of these. And while being on the sound comparison, let's talk about high-res audio for a bit, because nothing mentions this comes on both products. Both earbuds support AAC SBC LDAC codecs, but Ear also gets the new LHDC 5.0, which stands for Lower Latency High Definition Audio Codec. These guys from LHDC are saying that this allows high resolution audio streaming over Bluetooth. Now, we've seen this across other Bluetooth codecs in the past, including LDAC, and I still get confused when they say that because Bluetooth does not support high resolution audio. Having a capability of streaming 24-bit 192 does not qualify as high-res when the bitrate is lower than CD. Everything above the CD is high-res and everything below is lossy, basically compressed. And all the Bluetooth codecs are lossy. Now, this doesn't mean AAC or LDAC, for example, sounds bad. In fact, the hardware here is a lot more important than your codec. And I bet you'll probably won't tell any difference if you switch from AAC to LDAC. I couldn't hear anything different on those, but what I could hear was the difference between streaming services and earbuds in general. Apple Music streams fully lossless, where Spotify only does MP3. Now, I know this sounds a bit confusing, as what is sent from your streaming app in some situations doesn't arrive at your ears, especially if you're listening to a high-res album on Apple Music or Tidal, but the filtering and downsampling from a high-res source is definitely noticeable. Actually, Paul from PS Audio explained this very well in one of his videos. High-resolution audio is not about hearing those extra frequencies, because we won't, but actually is the filtering and the digital to analog conversion that's done a lot better when it comes from a high-res file rather than a CD or MP3 source. So coming back to the settings on this, the noise control, this is where you get all the basic noise cancelling and transparency. On the CMS buds I've reviewed last month, this was not too accurate and it was giving me a drastic EQ shift while switching between their modes. However, on Ear and Ear A, we finally don't have this issue anymore. These sound the same no matter what mode you're on, which is a big relief. Both of these have pressure sensors as well, where you can squeeze the stems and get multiple options like answer calls, skip tracks, and then squeeze and hold for getting in and out of transparency mode. The noise cancelling on these both have 3 steps depending on how high you like it, but it also gets an adaptive mode too. I wish we can see some touch controls for volume like Apple has on their AirPods, but I think for this price we might be asking for a bit too much. The noise cancelling on both of these is good, But if you've tested and used anything from Apple or Sony in the past, you'll be a little bit disappointed. They don't really cancel high frequencies well. You can hear cars, birds, mainly sharp sounds, but it does well on the lower mids and bass, which are about 75% cancelled from what I can tell. Transparency, not great at all. This is a very hard feature to get, and over the years we've seen many brands trying to adopt it. And again, nothing really beats the AirPods or Sony Buds when it comes to this. Even the first generation of these beats the Nothing Buds when it comes to transparency mode. I would say overall the transparency on these is a lot better than the ones on their CMF buds, for example. They have more mics but still give you the feeling you have earplugs and not bringing the real live sound in. For me, this is totally fine in most of the situations, as you can still hear what's around, but the only thing I'm missing is during a call. Having an almost full transparency feature when you're on a call and hear the real world and yourself is a total game changer, and I've only seen that on AirPods so far. More features to compare on these both come with the new ChatGPT feature, but only if you're using a Nothing phone. This doesn't work on any other phones, so now you can just speak with the app with a single click and get an instant prompt. Wind noise on both seems to be average. We get quite a lot of rattling and deep bass on heavy winds, even with noise cancelling on. The battery on ear A is really good. You can expect 5.5 hours of playback with noise cancelling on, but turning that off almost doubles the battery life to 9.5 hours with a total of 42 hours including the case. On the other model is similar but a little bit less with an 8.5 hours on a full charge with ANC off, and then you get 40 hours in total including the case. My conclusion is that these are pretty awesome, and for what they offer at that price and the amazing design, probably nothing can beat them. If you want to see more about these headphones or more reviews like this, definitely let me know by liking the video or commenting down below. That helps a lot on the YouTube algorithm, and of course consider subscribing as well to the channel, as I'll be back with more reviews like this one. And as usual, I'll see you all in the next video.